the overall theme of this ride is to make the hind legs quicker and eventually stronger. Because he's hollow left, you can see he's falling out over his right shoulder. So I'll take a moment to work on the acceptance of the outside rein and the acceptance of my very active outside leg. As we come through this corner, I will straighten him almost to the point of counter bending. And you'll see that he is beginning to accept the bridle and come down on the bit. As he does so, then I reward him with a stretch. And we start to get a pretty good stretch with active hind legs as he comes across the diagonal. On a horse who's just learning his longitudinal balance, there's a fine line between stretching and hanging or pulling, and he doesn't know the difference yet. So throughout the ride, you'll see what I do when he starts to get too heavy in the bridle and how I correct him. His right side is a stiff side or short side, so I'm asking him to stretch all the muscles on his right side by stepping under more with his right hind, pushing his barrel outward, and bringing his nose slightly right. When he starts to hang down on the bridle without being asked to stretch, then I have another prompt transition, this time upward, to engage the hind legs. As we go through the turn, he's still following his nose, slightly bent right, accepting the outside rein as best he can, and followed again by a transition downward, asking him to turn quickly for Frankie, mostly so he doesn't run over the children, and then followed by another upward to get the hind leg stepping under. He starts to compress a little bit in the sitting trot and starts to accept the right rein, and I feel like this is a good moment to ask for the first steps of the stretching circle. So we get a few good steps in the beginning, and he's trying as hard as he can to keep pushing behind. And then I ask him to come back up without changing tempo. When he starts to pull a little, another downward transition, followed by a halt, turn on the forehand, again to get him off my right leg, and followed by a turn over the poles. If we have poles around, we go over them, partially to keep the horse interested mentally, but also to increase the articulation of the hocks. We're starting to get, again, a little softening in the jaw, a little chewing and bending, and over the poles to help increase the articulation of his hind legs, followed by quicker turns to keep his interest, to keep him more engaged mentally, allowing him to come back a little bit in the sitting trot, and there we have some bend right, and rewarded by another turn to the left, and then forward to posting trot again, and over the poles because they're there. If he starts to lean on my right leg, we'll follow with a turn to the right, either a turn on the forehand or a turn on the haunches, and then forward immediately to trot, so that particularly the stifle joint has to both move sideways as he steps under and then push forward and back, again strengthening the hind legs. follow up with another downward transition. Turn, controlling the shoulders and the outside rein, and forward to another trot as quickly as he can. And again, really working on the right rein, asking him to accept. He's the kind of a horse that does a little better with his longitudinal balance, reaching evenly forward to both reins. He doesn't fight the bridle, but he doesn't understand inside leg to outside rein, and he thinks that I'm a little picky and weird. In the downward transitions, I start a leg yield, again to get the stifle joint moving better in the socket, and every downward is followed with a slight leg yield out. Those are easier to the left and the right. And then again a turn, slight half turn on the forehand to get the right hind under him. And then trying to kind of leg yield out, harder on this side for him. Lots of upward transitions. He's again a horse who will probably come on the bit a little easier by finding his longitudinal balance, his back to front balance first, than if I really tried to bend him, because he is built like a block of wood. But there we have some bend right. And into a halt,